The Gertrude S. Caraway Awards of Merit are named in honor of the late Dr. Gertrude S. Caraway, a noted New Bern historian and preservationist. First presented in 1974, the awards give deserved recognition to individuals or organizations that have demonstrated a genuine commitment to historic preservation through extraordinary leadership, research, philanthropy, promotion, or significant participation in preservation.
My name is Nick Smith. I serve as Chief of Staff at the Dix Park Conservancy. I manage projects and board and staff operations here at Dorothea Dix Park. The Conservancy formed in 2016, and we exist as the partner to the City of Raleigh to fundraise, to advocate, and also to support the development and the fulfillment of the Dix Park Master Plan. So when we started envisioning the rehab of the stone houses, they were in a condition from the exterior that seemed they were not salvageable. The superintendent's house is the largest of the three. It's on its original foundation. Adjacent to the superintendent's house are two other structures, both made of, in some part, of locally quarried stone. The physician's house is the second largest structure of the three. And then the third structure is the gatekeeper's cottage. Together they make what we call the stone houses collectively. Three parts of the original historic entrance into the Dorothea Dix campus. Further analysis inside, we found that the bones of the structures were actually really strong. And we had a confidence that we could actually save these structures. We kept the majority of the footprints of each of the structures intact with some minor tweaks for functionality. And then it was faithful restoration to the historic period. These structures were all built at or around 1923, so they're 100 years old, and we actually renovated them in 2023, so at the 100-year mark. But we've been thinking about this project for over 4 years when we completed it, and it's incredible because the moment that you open these spaces up, not only are they used by staff on a day-to-day basis, but the community flocks to these spaces as well. Just this past week, we had a school group that brought their summer camp to the outdoor classroom and had lunch down there and got to spend time looking out over the grove outside on a beautiful day. So it's extremely fulfilling to know that this is a space that will last and be used by generations of community members.
My name is Philip Woolcott. I'm a native here of Asheville, born and raised. My company is JPW Development, and I'm a co-founding partner of Flatiron Preservation Group. That entity was formed to restore and preserve this iconic building here in Asheville, North Carolina. The Flatiron building was built by a prolific developer here in Asheville, L.B. Jackson. It opened in 1926. It was office building with retail on the ground floor. Having grown up here, it's one of my favorite buildings in downtown Asheville. And my business partners, Robbie Whites and Jeremy Rincon, founded Flatiron Preservation Group with myself to buy this property, restore it to its original glory, and to do that it had to be adaptive reuse, which we were successfully able to complete. An amazing renovation of the project and convert it into a boutique hotel with a fabulous restaurant, a wonderful speakeasy in the old boiler room, and a rooftop bar. The thing I'm most proud of about this project is what we've accomplished with restoring this amazing iconic building here in downtown Asheville. I remember shortly after we got the project under contract, my father, who unfortunately passed before we completed the project, had all these wonderful childhood memories of running around in this building. He remembers running up and down the slate stairs here in the Flatiron, which we preserved and are still here. And I think it's those sort of generational memories of the community with what has happened in this building, people's fond memories of this building, that me and my team were very successful in restoring and preserving for the next generations. Future generations will be able to enjoy this building and hear stories. I think we did a good job in preserving the soul of this building for the community of Asheville.
My name is Amanda Miller.
And I'm Scott Miller. And we've owned the Henderson Barrier House since 2023. Very proud of the house and the history that came with it. The house was built sometime between 1830 and 1840 by Dr. Henderson. He owned it up until the 1870s, 1880s.
It is the oldest wooden home on record in the town, and it is the only single-story, double-pile Greek Revival architecture in Cabarrus County, and one of the only few across the state of North Carolina. So it absolutely is a gem for the town and the county, and just the fact that it's been so well maintained with the families over almost 200 years is what really drew us to being able to give it back to the community in some way. You know, we love the fact that there were so many items that were original to the house: the floors, the walls, the ceilings, the mantles, the windows. But it definitely needed a little bit of elevation and upgrade to get it back to what we know it could have been.
So a lot of it was taking out new things that people had added to make it more functional, to take it back to as close as we could, at least, to the way it was originally. You know, a perfect example is it had perfectly good, nice brick stairs in the front of the house. Well, when the house was built in 1830, it didn't have brick stairs, it would have been wooden stairs. So we ripped out all of those and put in wood stairs. So when you see those things, it's kind of neat. So it was a lot of fun. There was a lot of work, and the one thing on working on a house that old is you never know what you're gonna find. You know, a lot of times you have an idea and you never get it to where you think it should be. And I think on this one we have. My wife has a great eye for detail and design. Combining that with the research we did and then the physical work, it all came together. And I think winning this award on preserving it is validation that we did the right thing with the house.
Well, I'm Amanda Keith,
And I'm James Keith.
and we're the owners of the New Ray Hotel and Carriage House Sundries
In Burnsville, North Carolina.
Yeah. It's kind of funny because a lot of the history is kind of loosely known. What we do know is it was built around 1833. It was a hotel and tavern from the very beginning, and then the town kind of grew up around it, and then it was expanded over time. In 1870 there was an expansion, and in 1915 it was expanded. So it kind of grew with demand in the town.
I think what we're proud of on this project, at least this is my first thought, is that where a lot of people may have run from the project because it financially turned upside down so fast. But we knew the impact it would have on the community, so we committed. I think we committed so heavily that we did everything above and beyond what I would consider the right way structurally, with all the mechanicals, fire sprinkler system, all that designed so that the building would be, barring a disaster, still standing after another century. That was what we felt was the right way to do it for the building and what had not been done previously.
Yeah. I think people were really excited when they realized that we were serious and we were really going to do it, because they'd watched a series of owners before us kind of take it on and then give it up very quickly. We're getting people all the time come into our front doors saying, I was here 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, and they have some kind of great memory, and now they're back to see it in its new life. So it's been a really great response from people. It's always great to be recognized, and it's nice to hear that people are paying attention to what we're doing. And it's really doesn't feel like just recognition for us, but it's recognition for the New Ray and how important it is to this community. So yeah, it feels really good.
Yeah.
My name is Dorothy Dorr. My role is just a charter member of the High Point Preservation Society and vice president at this time. And my role was to really raise money for the project. The Oakwood Memorial Park Cemetery was the second addition to a municipal cemetery, the City of High Point Municipal Cemetery, that was started in 1859, the same year that the City of High Point was incorporated. Stephen Clark, who was a developer of Old Emerywood, one of the great suburban neighborhoods of North Carolina, he decided he would develop another 15 acres for Memorial Park. And he built this beautiful little gatekeeper's house in 1926.
This cemetery, this park, along with the gatekeeper's cottage and the wonderful entry, is a touchstone for all citizens of High Point. It's a historic treasure, and that's really what High Point Preservation Society presented to the city.
I think the city felt that it could not be restored. I looked at a building that was built like a little tank. Slate roof, Flemish bond brick, plaster interior, beautiful, beautiful gates. And they just saw something to maintain. What we did, we just basically tried to educate the city. And we also did a very detailed plan and had the money. The foundations were so good to work with us and were interested in the project and understood its relevance to the Hayworth family and David Hayworth's love of preservation.
It wasn't as big a project as it might have been in the minds of others. Once you got into it, it was a matter of succinctly piecing the project out, starting roof and working your way down to the floor. We updated the plumbing, we updated the electrical. We used D2 solution to clean all the stonework on the entry, etc. And boy, does that work beautifully. It was amazing.
Well, I'm most proud that the city let us do it, because they started off pretty closed. But I think they've been more and more open to the idea of historic preservation. And we just need to continue to work on that.
I'm Jessie Landell. I'm the Executive Director of the Preservation Society of Asheville and Buncombe County. In the immediate aftermath of the storm, there were just so many unknowns. We didn't have a real sense of what was happening in the community. Communications were down. It was very hard to get information. Everyone that works for us was living in the circumstances of the storm, so we didn't have power ourselves, we didn't have water, we didn't have the ability to communicate with other people. And so right at the start especially, there were so many unknowns. But as soon as email became available, we emailed our membership to let them know we were here and that we were available to answer questions and help people. We really thought that our role was going to be technical support in those early days. And of course, that was completely wrong. One of the early things we did was get information out about drying out homes. And at our first board meeting after the storm, we knew that our grant program would be something we could easily transition into hurricane recovery. And so almost immediately we started offering grants to people who had hurricane damage on a structure that was 50 years or older. We also offered anyone that needed one a free dehumidifier or generator if their structure was 50 years or older. Our thought was that eventually there would be FEMA money, eventually there would be insurance money, eventually there would be other larger grants. $5,000 is really small in comparison to the damage that was done to a lot of these places. But we saw ourselves as the fast money. So we were getting people their funds within a few days of their application coming to us so that they could use those funds to quickly dry out their spaces, keep shoveling mud as long as they could without those funds. We were looking for structures, of course, that were historic, but beyond that, we were not restricting the funds and we were getting them to people fast. We've given out over 50 grants in response to the hurricane, and the total in funding that we've given out is $275,000 in hurricane relief very quickly in the months after the storm. We actually stopped doing hurricane grants a few months back now, and we are back into our regular grant rounds. We've heard from a lot of the grant winners about the difference that the funding made. We had one gentleman who had been told that his house should be demolished, that it was impossible to save it. And that's not what he wanted, but he also didn't know. And so he reached out to us. We were able to do a site visit. We were able to say that we thought the house was savable, and we did give him a grant, and he said that was the turning point for him in saving the house. I think for a lot of us that have worked here, we love what we do, but the way we were able to respond to this hurricane is one of the things we're the most proud of. It means a lot to have this recognition of the work that we did, because it was hard, but it also feels like we were able to have a huge impact in our community these last few months.
My name is Nolan Dom. I am a historian and our exhibits manager at Charlotte Museum of History. Somewhere around 1923, the Siloam School was constructed in the Mallard Creek community here in Charlotte. And the reason it's so significant is it was one of somewhere in the realm of 24 Rosenwald schools that were built here in Mecklenburg County.
Well, I'm Fanny Flono. I chaired the Siloam School, Save the Siloam School project. I am a trustee at the Charlotte Museum of History. One of the reasons we decided to restore it now was because we were just finding out about the school. It was kind of obscured in a neighborhood on a hill behind an apartment complex. So it's really very hard to even see it or view it. And so when we found out about this building and that it was a Rosenwald design building, we were very interested in helping to save it.
So the building in its original location up in the Mallard Creek community was frankly, at least visually, in really bad shape. But of course, when we ask experts, people from SHPO, people from historic landmarks, we get people in there and we actually started to learn that, at least structurally, a lot of the building was in pretty good shape. Then it was moved in September of 2023, so brought it to campus, and then it took just about 9 months. It was June of 2024 when it was open to the public. One thing to emphasize here, this is the only Rosenwald school in Charlotte that is open as a historic site. There are 7 others in the county, but ours is the one where you can come and kind of really see a restored version of it.
Because of our journey to getting it to the campus, there are a lot of people who know about the school, and so they're very interested in seeing how it was restored, and it has been beautifully restored. And so people who go through it can actually get a sense of what it was like to be in school as an African American in the 1920s and 30s. So this was really, really something that was important for me personally, to have this building being saved, and getting an award for doing that. And I hope some people will take some lessons from this and save some more buildings to learn that you can actually get this thing done. And you can win a reward for it. So I'm really happy and appreciative of it.
Congratulations to all recipients of the 2025 Gertrude S. Caraway Award of Merit. The Alexa Aycock Grassroots Leadership Award is the highest honor presented to community leaders who demonstrate an outstanding commitment to preservation through advocacy and community engagement. The award is made possible by the Marion Stedman Covington Foundation of Greensboro in honor of Alexa Aycock, who served as the foundation's grants coordinator and executive director for more than 30 years. The award recipient receives a $500 stipend and may direct an additional $500 award to a historic preservation organization or project of their choice.
My name is Samantha Stewart, and I'm the Executive Director of the Marion Stedman Covington Foundation. We created this award 2 years ago to celebrate the very first Executive Director of the Covington Foundation, Alexa Aycock. She was the Executive Director from 1991 until very recently, when she trained me and helped me take on the role. She, for many decades, was really helpful to organizations across the state in helping them develop and grow, and maybe it was their first application, and they worked with Alexa, and she really showed them the ropes and introduced them to the preservation world and the grants world. And so we decided to create this award to celebrate her legacy. I think it's wonderful to have an award named after her because she's not really the type of person to want to be in the spotlight. And I think that for so many decades, she was really pivotal in a lot of, especially smaller organizations, growing and developing and taking on really complex projects and helping them through every step of the process. So it really made sense for us to create this award in her honor to thank her for her long legacy of stewardship and work with all of these organizations across the state.
The recipient of this year's award is Leslie Bryans of the Pines Preservation Guilds.
My name is Leslie Bryans, and I'm the president and co-founder of the Pines Preservation Guild. So I have wanted to go into historic preservation from when I was very young. I went to college for it. I got an undergraduate in historic preservation. It's been part of my life for as long as I can remember. Being lucky enough to live in Moore County, for at that point about 5 years, I was like, how do we not have a historic preservation advocacy organization in Moore County? We have a national landmark district. We have, I think, 7 historic districts overall. We have tons of historic properties, but there was no arm advocating for their preservation. I started talking to people who were contractors in the area, people who were in government, just about, hey, is there something that you feel like we're missing in this area when it comes to preservation and historic buildings? And the social media aspect was just kind of like putting our feet in the water a little bit to kind of bring light to these historic buildings without anything being formal. I want it to be kind of a positive space where we were like, hey, did you know the history about this building? Moore County is very transient. So a lot of people don't know that we have really incredible buildings. And so that's where the social media part started. And once that kind of took off a little bit, we sought nonprofit 501c3 designation. The impact I think that we've had in the short time that we've been around is I think we have brought more attention to the importance of our historic buildings and our historic communities in Moore County. And I won't give us all of the credit, but I think prior to us coming on the scene and kind of bringing these issues to light, everyone just kind of thought of Moore County as a retirement golf community that the military lived in. And there's a lot more to it than that. I think that's going to be the importance of our organization, is continuing to say we have a really important story to tell here. Our buildings are what tell that, and that is why we need to continue to exist, and that's why we do the work that we do. So grassroots preservation is really, really important for preservation, because that is where preservation becomes accessible to people that are just everyday stewards or everyday community members. It gives them the ability to actually make a difference. Preservation can be really intimidating. I've realized this, that it's very intimidating to a lot of average people because they think it's very inaccessible, or if you don't have a degree, then you don't know what you're talking about. And I think that that is detrimental to our field. We have to involve people who are the ones that are going to be actually using the structures that we're advocating to save. That's why I think we're important and we're necessary, and there does need to be the professional aspect, but professional doesn't work without having the grassroots and the community support.
The Dwayne H. Anderson Sr. Award for Housing is the highest honor presented for the development of housing in historic buildings. This award recognizes that creative, affordable, or urban housing solutions are of special interest for historic preservation. First presented in 2023, the award is made possible by the family of the late Dwayne H. Anderson Sr. of Winston-Salem, whose career and leadership resulted in thousands of units of new housing in historic schools, mills, and hospitals across the South. The recipient of this year's award is David Maurer.
I'm David Maurer. I am principal of Maurer Architecture and Tightlands Designs. Between 2000 and 2010, I was doing a lot of historic preservation work and adaptive reuse all over the state. And I found myself working in a lot of smaller towns. And what I noticed was most of the towns were doing okay, but they were only 50% occupied. It was the first floor. We had a lot of vacant upper floors. And I started wondering, well, what kind of use? There's no market for retail or office on the second floor. And I was doing some research and reading and realized that if we could start adding residential units to downtown, how much of an impact that could have. So I actively started working on looking for projects that we could do apartments downtown, and we started doing work in Goldsboro. First one was in 2011 to 12, but it was very difficult to kind of figure out how to navigate the code and the design issues, but it was so successful that we immediately started finding more and more projects. In 2016, Liz Parham with Main Street asked me to do a talk at the annual conference, which happened to be in Goldsboro, about how to do and encourage upper-level residential in your downtowns. So I made a presentation, talked about design issues, building code issues, how to do historic tax credits, even financial, how these projects work. I was then subsequently asked to give my same talk approximately 40 times around the state to different municipalities, and it's hard to believe today, but the number one question I got is like, who would want to live downtown? You know, fast forward to now, it's quite the reverse. Everybody understands the impacts of living downtown. Banks are willing to finance, and it's actually easier to do. But after all these workshops, we certainly started seeing people changing mind and understanding how to do it. I think one of the most rewarding things is then once everybody understood that it could be done and the economic benefits, these projects started catching on like wildfire all over the state. I am most proud of the impact this project niche has had across North Carolina. To see the number of downtowns that have thrived and have changed socially and culturally because they now have people living downtown, to me is personally very rewarding. I'm very proud of our projects, but the whole ripple effect of what's happened by having people living downtown, then to see the change in literally less than 10 years has been, it just brings me a huge amount of pride, and just so grateful to have been involved in this cultural and social and physically changed environment in our downtowns.
The Minette C. Duffy Landscape Preservation Award is the highest honor given for the preservation, restoration, or maintenance of landscapes, gardens, streetscapes, or grounds related to historic structures. First presented in 1987, the award is made possible by the family of the late Minette Chapman Duffy of New Bern, whose leadership contributed to the reconstruction of Tryon Palace. The recipient receives a $500 stipend.
I am Minette Bickle Basil, and I am the granddaughter of Minette Duffy. Her legacy in preservation is extraordinary. I always look up to her to emulate. She was indefatigable along with a lot of other ladies in North Carolina at a time when it was hard to do all the things that they did. She led the effort along with 4 other ladies, they were called the Dreamers, to restore, rebuild, and reopen Tryon Palace for the public. That was a 30-year initiative. She also was very, very involved in the North Carolina Garden Club and many other garden initiatives. Her amazing work is not forgotten.
The recipients of this year's award are Heath Massey and John Mitchner.
My name is John Mitchner, and we're the new stewards of Playmore here in Highlands, North Carolina. Playmore was acquired by Samuel Perlow Ravenel, who was from the Charleston area, and he eventually owned about 30,000 acres all around Highlands, but he chose Playmore for his home. We became aware of Playmore back in about 20 years ago when came over here for a picnic with my brother, who was good friends with some of the owners who were from New Orleans, and never thought that it would be in our future. And when we were able to get it in 2020, we were lucky because there were a lot of developers that were looking at it, quite a few, and it was just something that they really, really wanted, and it would have been developed. So we were able to get it and preserve the home and preserve the landscape from development. We actually did put a lot of work into it. When we got here, it had been pretty well maintained, but we had to come in and take out a lot of trees that had fallen and just had to do a lot of landscape cleanup. And also around the house, we ended up having to carefully remove a lot of rock because we wanted to get some of the rock away from the back part of the house. And so to remove some of that rock while preserving the structure, which is on the National Register of Historic Places, we had to drill in with expansion grout and crack the rocks and remove them that way as opposed to blasting with dynamite. So that took a lot of work. We added a lot of apple trees, had an orchard at one time that was had a lot of heirloom apples, so we got a lot of heirloom apple trees that do well in the Appalachians to replace those with. So yeah, things like that. Well, anytime you win an award for trying to be a good steward of such an incredibly beautiful place, it does make us feel good because we believe strongly in historic preservation, and the fact that we're in a position to be stewards of something like Claymore into the future is really an honor, and we're pleased.
The L. Vincent Lowe Jr. Business Award is the highest honor presented to a business that assists or promotes historic preservation in North Carolina. Established in 1983, the name was changed in memory of Vincent Lowe of Wilson, a champion of historic causes in North Carolina, who served as chair of Preservation NC's 50th anniversary campaign. The Lowe Business Award recognizes companies that have shown vision, leadership, and creativity in promoting the protection of the state's architectural resources.
My name is Lester Lowe, and I'm the son of my late father, L. Vincent Lowe. Preservation for him, when it first started, there was not a lot of fanfare to it, and at the time, not a lot of corporate support. And so it was a big jump for him and the bank to step in at a time when there were many other needs out there from other organizations. But he saw that on a statewide basis is something that we had to really push forward and make it a priority in the state. I think if he was sitting here today, he would tell you he doesn't deserve his name on that. He's always someone wanting others to see and share the spotlight. But from our current family, I think it's a wonderful tribute to what he did in preservation.
The recipient of this year's award is C.T. Wilson Construction.
Okay, I'm Charlie Wilson, the president of C.T. Wilson Construction Company. We really got involved in historic preservation work, I guess, starting with, we did a lot of just school renovations. They weren't historic renovations necessarily, but we just got used to doing renovation projects. Early 2000s, I guess, be the first actual historic tax credit renovation project we've done, and just enjoyed them. They're a lot of fun. They're challenging, but as long as you got the right project team, they're just great and fun projects to work on. They're really, we have a bunch of them going on really all the time since then. Historic preservation has become a big part of our overall, volume, it varies, but some years it may be half of the total volume we do are historic preservation projects. We approach these projects, they're all different, but I think the main thing that's the same on all of them is we like to get involved early on during the design phase, work as a team with the owner and the designer and the engineers, and really first step's just getting to know the building. Every one of them is different. Everyone has challenges. Really, the more upfront we can learn about the building, learn about the history of the building, and then really learn what the client's goals are. What do they, want to get out of the project? Is it going to be, apartments, offices, a mixture of both, whatever it may be, so that we can really be a better team member as the project goes forward. Yeah, I really enjoy these projects. There are a lot of reasons. One is just the people you meet. I've got people that are now good friends that I worked for starting 20, 30 years ago. The problem solving part of it, where you're trying to really figure out something that you don't see every day. There's not like a code book you can go look up and say, oh, well, here's how you do this. There's always a new challenge. I think that's a fun part of it. And it's just neat to be able to I enjoy just riding around the triangle or the triad and just seeing buildings and now where all these people are living in apartments. That used to be a abandoned textile mill that was falling apart, and we had something to do with putting it back together again and making it, an occupied space. It's been interesting. We renovated the old Chapel Hill Library, but that building my grandfather built when it was a brand new building for the library for the town of Chapel Hill. Our market's still a pretty small market. The buildings, there's several buildings that, my father worked on, that I've subsequently worked on, or my grandfather's worked on, that both my father and I have worked on. So it's a neat aspect to kind of go back to something, your father or grandfather built years and years ago. You tend to think you win an award for something like you did that was hard or not easy or not fun. Some of these projects have been hard, but they've all been fun. And it's neat to win an award for something that you enjoy doing.
The Stedman Incentive Grant is awarded to recognize and assist nonprofit organizations in their efforts to preserve the state's architectural heritage. Originating in 1976, the award is funded each year by the Marion Stedman Covington Foundation of Greensboro in memory of Marion's father. The $15,000 grant encourages and facilitates the rescue of endangered historic and architecturally significant properties in North Carolina.
My name is Samantha Stewart, and I'm the Executive Director of the Marion Stedman Covington Foundation. The Marion Stedman Covington Foundation was actually founded by Marion Stedman Covington's father, who is a textile manufacturer in Asheboro, North Carolina. And so Mrs. Covington had a very long history of philanthropy and was a really important patron for preservation in the early years in North Carolina. And so the foundation today is just focused on protecting and preserving the heritage of North Carolina's architecturally significant and historically significant properties. As a foundation, we get to see so many great applications from all over the state of North Carolina, but this one is special because we get to partner with Preservation North Carolina, who we're very proud to partner with, and we know that they have a real connection with lots of organizations across the state that are doing great work. And so we're just really thrilled to be able to continue supporting this award.
The recipient of this year's award is the Warren County Community Center.
Hi, I am Shauna Singletary Williams. I am president of the board of the Warren County Community Center located in Warrenton, North Carolina. The Warren County Community Center was born out of a need. I tell people, you were black, you look like me. There were no restroom facilities for you, no bathrooms. All of the bathrooms were labeled white only. And so there was a school teacher, her name was Winnie B. Williams. She started talking about the need for a lavatory with restroom facilities. And basically what she meant was we needed a bathroom. And so she was one of many who galvanized the community. And on Christmas Day in 1933, they sent out 100 postcards. 96 persons, black and white, men and women, met on Christmas Day and started what has now become the Warren County Community Center. But the community center was the only place for black people to go back in that day. So by the time the building was initially built and open, it was considered a state-of-the-art 2-story brick building. One year, a gentleman walked into the building and he pointed to the corner right near the library and he said, "My wife and I got married right there in the community center." And so people did, there was community organizing, NAACP, any kind of protest, anything. It was done there. My husband said it was the place to go. The building, it was in okay shape when my husband and I got on the board in 2007. There had never been a substantial amount of work done on the building ever. And so you're talking about a building that was built in the mid-1930s. As I told you, some of the bricks were even made by hand. So, of course, over time, stuff starts to wear down. And one of the first things I did was we looked around the building and I said, we can't ask people to help us if we don't help ourselves. And so the first things we did were we cleaned up the building where we could. We painted, we refinished the hardwood floors. We needed everything. I mean, we needed new plumbing, we needed insulation in the ceiling, we needed a new roof. We had to redo the whole entire outside front porch and steps. We needed new electrical. And so that work is still in progress. I think the building is important because of its history, how it was started, who it was started,
And the fact that it is a Black-owned historical building in North Carolina, I think that's all tremendous assets. I think we have a story to tell. I think our story has long been hidden. And so I'm really proud that we are the people now who I believe have the charge to tell the world about it. You've got a wonderful place, a wonderful history, a wonderful story. We're about the only place like it in the state. And so I think we're important not only to our Warren County, but to the state and to the nation. We are an African-American gem in Warren County, North Carolina. That's to be proud of and that's to be talked about.
The Robert E. Stipe Professional Award is the highest honor presented to working professionals who demonstrate an outstanding commitment to preservation as part of their job responsibilities. The award was established in 1983 to memorialize the many contributions of Robert E. Stipe of Chapel Hill, an educator in the field of historic preservation and a mentor to a generation of preservation professionals. The award recognizes career preservationists who show exceptional leadership or dedication to the field. The recipient receives a $500 stipend.
Well, my name is Fred Stipe, and I am Robert Stipe's youngest son. He was one of the founding fathers of the preservation movement in the United States. And he was primarily responsible for writing an awful lot of the historic preservation legislation here in North Carolina. And he was one of the leaders in the historic preservation movement. Both in North Carolina, but also nationwide, and also somewhat, to a certain degree, worldwide. I think it's a wonderful honor, and everyone in my family is very grateful, both that he accomplished as much as he did during his life, but that his legacy is being honored in such a wonderful way.
The recipient of this year's award is Clay Griffith.
I'm Clay Griffith, and I am president and owner of Acme Preservation Services in Asheville. Came to North Carolina wanting to end up in Asheville, and knew of the preservation specialist position with the Western Office of Chapot. Worked in the Western Office for 3 years or so, and then switched over to the consulting side, private sector side. Acme Preservation does a wide range of historic documentation, National Register nominations, local landmark designations, surveys, and then a lot of Section 106 compliance environmental review projects for state agencies, federal agencies. The people is a huge part of it. I mean, and obviously the buildings, the architecture, I've got to see, well, everything from very mundane to amazing buildings all across the state. Got to explore all over the state, and that's been amazing. Very nice to win this award. It's very flattering. I didn't get into it for the recognition or the high-profile nature of it. I like doing my work kind of behind the scenes and, putting together good work and putting it out there, making it available. But again, didn't get into it for the glory and the recognition. So it is nice to be recognized. So.
The Ruth Coltrane Cannon Award is North Carolina's most prestigious preservation award. It's presented to an individual or organization that has made contributions of statewide significance to historic preservation in North Carolina. Originating in 1948, the award is named for Ruth Coltrane Cannon of Concord in memory of her outstanding contributions to preservation. From 1945 to 1956, Miss Cannon served as president of the North Carolina Society for the Preservation of Antiquities, the predecessor organization of Preservation North Carolina.
My name is William Coltrane Cannon Jr., and my grandmother was Ruth Coltrane Cannon. Ruth Coltrane Cannon was a force to be reckoned with. She was involved in so many things, from Trine Palace to Horn in the West to the theater out on the Outer Banks, and just all things relating to history of of North Carolina and the South in general were very, very important to her. The recipients, I read through the recipients list, and what a wonderful list of names have won this award through the years. What is happening with continuing this award is recognizing those people who are making a lifetime difference in the state of North Carolina.
The recipients of this year's award are Joseph and Langdon Opperman. Joseph and Langdon Opperman have been a dynamic duo in the field of historic preservation. Joe is a nationally recognized architect specializing in historic preservation and adaptive reuse. Over a 40-year career, he has led numerous award-winning projects and continues to help shape national preservation standards and policies. Langdon is an architectural historian and preservation planner with decades of experience in research, planning, and compliance. She has led state preservation programs, authored major studies, and served on national and local boards. Together, they have made a lasting impact on historic preservation in North Carolina.
I'm Langdon Opperman. A lot of people in North Carolina know me as Langdon Edmonds because that's how I started life.
And I'm Joe Opperman, and I prefer the title of historical architect. Growing up in Galveston was just wonderful. I was a kid that always liked to draw and do things, color things, think visually. And I didn't go into architecture because the one architect that I knew in Galveston was somebody that was always tearing down the buildings that I love so much. And I thought, if that's what architects do, I don't want to be part of it. And I didn't care for what he replaced them with. So I went to the University of Texas, went to graduate school in history for a year until there was an all-graduate school conference to tell us all that there really are not many jobs in teaching history in colleges, and said, better reconsider what you want to do for your life. I then went into architecture and loved it immediately.
I grew up in Charleston. He grew up in Galveston. Both are cities with beautiful, beautiful architecture, wonderful histories, and a preservation ethic that's all through the community at that time. I went to Hollins College and got a BA in city planning and historic preservation. And then I lucked out and got a job, started working with the North Carolina SPO because of Catherine Beischer, and worked with just wonderful people there. And then, as Joe said, I was off and running.
We've had a number of really good projects. This is sort of like choosing among your children. Who's your favorite? All of them are interesting, and all of them are such that you learn from them as well. Working on the North Carolina Capitol, we did a number of phases of repairs there. Back in the late 80s, when Montpelier was given over to the National Trust. Huge estate, 100 and some odd rooms. The DuPont family had expanded this early house. And our conclusion was that inside that big, massive structure, there was indeed the original house. Another one was the Decatur House, which was the original 1949 headquarters for the National Trust for Historic Preservation. We do a lot of historic structures report. I think we did a count a couple of years ago here, and nearly 100 of them for the National Park Service alone. A new project is St. James Episcopal Church in Wilmington, the Orange County Courthouse, one of Catherine Beischer's favorite buildings. We're doing a master plan for it now. We have a lot of good projects around the state and beyond.
First of all, I think it's important work. I think it makes a difference in the localities, in the states. I think it makes a difference nationally. It's fun because you're working with good people. The people that work in preservation care what they're doing. Most people aren't bored with their jobs. It's things that they want to do. But in the long run, it matters because it makes a huge difference to where people live. And preservation matters a great deal. Year after year after year and decade after decade, what's saved makes a difference to a community.
The first thing that comes to mind when you ask, what do I enjoy about this? It's the camaraderie. I think because we all feel like this is something that's bigger than any of us, that this is important for the communities, for the country, that this is a bigger calling, this is a bigger mission. It's a noble calling, I think. I think we all feel that way about it, that it's much more important. It's one of the more important things we could be doing.
To win the award, well, first of all, it was shock and awe. It's exciting. It's certainly a feel-good thing. And we won it together, and that's really fun. Overall, life is good. It's good to work and to have worked in a preservation, in a profession that you think matters. Getting ready for this, it's fun to have looked back and to look at what you did to get ready. You realize all the different things you did, where you landed that was great, and to feel that you are doing something that's important. I'd say I'm in a happy place.